Okay, so what we're going to do is test this one. But so here's my iPad, as you can probably see. That's the kind of brush I've been using. It's called a rigger, and my niece Kara, this is her favorite brush. So I never used it, but I use it a lot. That's pretty worn down now. All the numbers have gone, so I don't know what they are. But I use 3 or 4 brushes, and I don't do anything fancy. As you can see, that's kind of the palette that I use, and I kind of stack everything in terms of pink. It's kind of the tubes in the palette, so all of this stuff is just carrying the paint around, and then the main area is the blacks, the purples, the green, the yellow ochre, and the oranges. And that's kind of what I'm working with. So let's get started. I'm going to get some greens on this parrot. A lot of the work is actually done on the palette itself rather than on the paper. So I'm kind of trying to get both a thin and thick consistency. So part of the picture is going to be very much like cream, and part of it is going to be a bit like milk. So here we go. And now that's very milky in its texture, as you can see. I'm using a bit of just green, bright green, and then mixing bits which you can't see, but a lot of what I'm doing here may be more advanced in the sense that I'm quite comfortable with the paint now. I don't think I was that comfortable to begin with, but the point I'm trying to make here is that, see, all that's really watery here, and that's kind of a beginner mistake, kind of mistake that I used to make. It needs to be thicker, and if you don't have that thickness, then the focus of the person is lost. So the thicker it is, so I'm just kind of dabbing and it's flowing, and that's why I've got this thing at an angle here, this book at an angle. So it's flowing, and that's going to make a nice thick kind of thing here. The areas where I don't want so much focus, I just keep it thinner. This won't be the best of videos, but it will give you an idea. If you notice, I'm not really pushing the paint so much. I'm letting it do its own thing. It flows down by itself. And now that we've got, see, this whole area was pretty runny, and I want to focus on the beak so much more rather than anything else. So I can keep the other parts relatively thick. I'm going to have to change the brush because now we're going to go through bigger areas. So the thicker brush, and you have to keep changing your brushes all the time. See, that's a less thick, but it's still much thicker than most watercolor. And really, it looks like I'm painting, but I'm not. I'm just moving the paint so that it does its own thing. I'm constantly adding different colors. Might want to add, like this is a blue now, it's not supposed to be there. This is a red, not supposed to be there. It doesn't really matter. It gives it a kind of feel that you don't always find in watercolors, which is they keep sticking to whatever the color is. I'm kind of just filling in areas like a kid would do at school, just much faster. And there you have your parrot. Now the crux is, of course, to get the red, and if I can find my brush. So probably take a brush like that, go into the red, and this red is like red and crimson and some orange. So I'm just going to zoom on my iPad here, which I'm copying from, and pink, and these are all the shades. Now, see, let's see how thick that is. That's got to be relatively thick. If I want your eye to go to a position, then I need the thing to be relatively thick. So still pretty runny. It shouldn't move very much, this paint, even as I'm dabbing, compared with something like this, which is just runny. See? So that paint isn't moving very much, and that's telling you, okay, that's thick. Let's get some little tinges of purple there. That paint isn't moving at all. Most of watercolor is just this, is if you want to get these rich colors rather than the runny watercolors that you see, you have to make sure that there are places where the watercolor will just stream through, and there are places where it's kind of stuck. It's just moving ahead. And this is where I like Kira's brush. We call this Kira's brush because she forced me to use it. I use it a lot these days, and I would have never used it. In fact, I told her she's an idiot for using it. Call her a donkey head, but now I use it a lot, and she doesn't turn up for watercolor classes anymore. Not because of me, but here we go. See how thick that is? Even as I put paint, it's barely moving. But you can see how rich it looks, and it's not watery at all. And that's the thing about watercolor as well, which you probably heard a million times before, is that when it dries up, it's going to look completely different. So this should give you like a first level. I'll go and mop this up, the ending. It gives you a first level understanding of how you get these bright colors. You could do something, usually what watercolors, and I'll do it just here to show you, is it's very light like that. See, it's stuff, and this is great for backgrounds. This is, things that are in the distance. And I'm putting this not because I wanted to, but just to demonstrate. Still makes a good background. This was the fort that we were in Rajasthan. There were hundreds of these parrots everywhere. Usually you start at the top and go to the bottom, but as you get more proficient in watercolors, you'll just dance around. When I first started, this was completely impossible, but now I know the wetness of the paper, so I wouldn't be dancing around so much if the paper weren't wet. So here the paper is not so wet on this side. and I can only do a limited amount. So there you go. There is no harm done. It can always dry. You can mop it up later. As you can see, it actually made it look quite nice. Often you just have to wait for it to dry. You can come back and clean it up. So you can lift paint off. So I'm doing this right now. Most people would do it on the spot, like I am. And see, it's given it a nice color actually. And now because of that, instead of putting that, I might just enhance it a bit, go with it. But this is the kind of watery feel that you tend to get with most watercolor. And you don't have to be afraid that the green is spilling or anything of that sort is happening. Yeah, that's pretty much it for this tutorial. Hope you enjoy it.